So now this question about which should I innovate? Okay. So this is just this is some market modeling type stuff we did. So the global market is increasing, right? It starts here 3%, and this is your current product. Okay. Like you mentioned, over time, typically whatever you're selling, the price is going down, And now do I do incremental versus next generation innovation? Incremental means you're on the same S-curve, and next generation means you're on a different S-curve. The underlying technology is different. Incremental innovation, right? The value is the total, like revenue, etc., is going to be less than next generation. But it is going to start earlier than this, and it will also need less money to develop that. Incremental innovation may be a 510K product, not like clinical trial PMA type. Okay? So this is, reward is more, but associated there is risk. Risk and money is more here than that, right? So yeah, that is a question for this one. If you look at Toyota, right? They came up with the hybrid way before anybody did, right? The Prius is, I don't know, at least 10 years or more than that. If you look at internal combustion engine, the future is uncertain, but a lot of companies are betting on electric, right? But Toyota doesn't have electric car, right? They are actually betting on hydrogen fuel. So when you look at the next generation, what the new S-curve will be, that is not always very clear. Okay? You really have to find what is the benefit of this new thing. And the second thing you have to look at is sometimes the new technology has a penalty associated with it. For example, electric car, the penalty associated with it is Tesla, you can drive from Boston to California, but refueling is at least a 1 hour endeavor, right? It takes time to refuel. So the challenge with it is, does this new technology that you have add value that overcomes sometimes there might be associated issues or penalties with it? Okay? All right. So one of the things of this S-curve thing is, way back, if you look at music per volume, right? Way back you had one song on an LP, then a whole album, and then of course the Walkman came along, mobile, then the CD player came along, and then of course today that's what music is. Okay? And Clay Christensen at Harvard Business School, he wrote this book called Innovators Dilemma, right? And as you see, these are all different S-curves, right? One of the biggest things you see is that the Walkman was Sony. This is Philips. This is Apple. So the new S-curves are always, typically, not every time, but 9 out of 10 is done by somebody else, not the person who is dominating the current S-curve. And that is what he calls the Innovators Dilemma. Okay? And the reason for that is, when you're in this early stage, because of R&D cost, etc., you're negative, right? You haven't made money. It's essentially you start making money in the stage 2, and your peak money is in stage 3. When you're making so much money here, right, are you going to sort of, I think what they say is, are you going to eat your young? Are you going to eat the money made of this to switch over to there? Right? That takes, I mean, Intel did that, Andy Grove. That was a world-renowned case study from memory to processor chips, if you will. But there are not that many examples. But now it is understood, and that is something you'll always have to look at in product development. And another thing, as far as innovators are concerned, there is this thing called pioneers, right? If you look at settling the US, right? Pioneers, this is a picture of Tesla, who looked at, and this is Netscape, right? And then the pioneers first went out, and then after that you had the settlers come in, right? This is Edison, this is Internet Explorer, and in Shark Tank, one of the guys made this comment, and as entrepreneurs, keep that in mind. Okay, if you're early, right? I mean, the AC current was the winning technology done by Tesla, but it's sometimes the second person actually makes the money. The digital music, Apple made all the money, but they weren't the people who invented it, if you will. Okay, so that's just like a note of caution, if you will. And the other thing to want you to keep in mind is you may have a grand vision, okay, but you have to take things in baby steps. If you look at Google today, right? Google is in everything. They're changing computers, they're changing phones, they're changing everything, right? But when you start, if you try to do a huge change, sometimes, and you sort of, when they came out and you sort of say, you know what, we're going to do search, but when you don't use your computers that you have, we're just going to replace everything. Sometimes the change is so big that people are not going to adopt it. You want to approach it in steps, if you will, right? They came up with search, then the browser, now there is OS systems, okay? And this is, again, a terminology called 15-minute advantage, which is you want to be ahead, but not too ahead. For example, they have seen, right, like monkeys using tools like rocks to break nuts and things like that. But if you give a monkey a cell phone, what is it going to do? You still use it as a rock, right? So if you come up with like too advanced, even as humans, we may not be ready to adopt that. Okay? So the takeaway here is think big, but you should have what is called multi-generation plan. Okay? Break up your idea into smaller pieces, and some of the initial pieces you want to, like the camera, and you want to coexist with the current environment. Let's say you have an idea for a game, right? You want to have the game working on smartphones, not with its own Nintendo thing, because everybody's used to phones. I'm not going to go back to the thing of carrying two different devices, if you will. Okay? So have multi-generation, coexist with the current environment, and then have the plan to change.